Hi, my name is Nick Broughton, and I am a Randomfish. Hit that subscribe button and let's all be Randomfishes together, shall we? So, I decide that once again I'm going to go back in time to a point when I was younger. The show was not made when I was younger, but was made about a decade beforehand. But I still watched it, I still enjoyed it, and hell, I think for a brief time I'm fairly sure I had a whole bunch of the stuff available on a VHS tape. Possibly from my brother and sister. In fact, there's no possibly about it. That's possibly the only way I could have ever gotten a hold of it. Unless, you know, I was ruffling through some kind of garage sale, car boot sale, and just went, ooh, look at that, and picked it up. I don't know. But anyway, back in 1981, kids, ask your parents about a time called the 80s. There was a show called Willo of the Wisp, created in Britain. It is a British TV show. Shut up. Willo of the Wisp. It's a great show with voices from Kenneth Williams, who a lot of you won't know, but take it from me, he's pretty funny and he's pretty good at what he does. However, this show was an animated show regarding a spirit of the forest telling stories to the young kids. However, it was filled with just enough intrigue and a bit of funny voices and a different type of humour that actually allowed it to be a bridge to both kids and adults. Which is actually possibly one of the reasons why I still enjoy the show today. In fact, I still have the DVD somewhere. I don't know where, but it's somewhere. But anyway, if I just take a look at my phone here, the show itself involved the Willo of the Wisp being the narrator of the story. However, there was also a caterpillar called Arthur, who had a gruff Cockney accent. A fairy called Mavis Cruitt. Okay, that's a weird name, but moving on. An evil witch called Evil Edna, who was a TV. Slightly hitting it a bit hard on the head there, but we move on, I guess. But above all that, we also had other characters, including a cat with spectacles called Car Wash. That's just a cool name, I love that. The Moog, who is a dog-like thing that, you know, if you completely shaved all the hair off. Kind of like that terrifying cat in Friends, except it's not really a cat. It's like that, but, you know, more dog-like and has a bit more of a monochrome of intelligence because it can speak, you know, basic English. A small bird called Twit. That's a bit hurtful, isn't it? Calling a bird Twit? I mean, come on! Have some decorum! We're British after all. And then, of course, you have the Beast. And a whole bunch of other random characters, including a bookworm, which is very cool as a concept. But the Beast was, in fact, a prince who annoyed Evil Edna, and she turned him into the Beast. Which was very cool. And actually, this does lead to a brilliant storyline. However, I've gone through the characters, but there's a reason why I'm talking about this show. There are two versions of it. You have the 1981 version, where there was only the one season, and then season 2 was made in 2005. Huh. Well, in the 2005 version, I don't remember anything, because A, I didn't know it was even happening again, mainly because I think it was on a channel that I didn't have access to at the time, and more importantly, I guess, I don't know, it feels like 1981 had a bit more character to it, I guess. The reason why I say this? Well, actually, quite a lot of reasons. Evil Edna, being a television at that time anyway, was quite interesting and almost kind of poetic. It was this thing where they sit there and say, we know that the TV is evil, but we also know that it serves a good purpose. And Evil Edna was more a case of the bad things of television, I guess. The stuff that sort of sucks out your intelligence more so than anything else, I guess. Although I could be talking complete and utter bollocks and I have absolutely no idea what the hell I'm talking about. But still. But Evil Edna herself was actually very cool, and was her magic sort of came from the antennas, and if she wanted to cast a spell, she'd hit, she'd move them in your direction, and lightning would shoot out of it and hit you with the spell. It was very cool. Mavis Cruet the Fairy is just useless. I mean, you couldn't really depend on her magic to save the day in any case whatsoever. If it came down to a magical fight between her and Evil Edna, she wouldn't stand even the slightest or the smallest of chances. It's just awful. Just awful. Arthur the Caterpillar and Mavis spend most of their time hanging out together because, well, they're the more of the main characters than anything else, them and Evil Edna. The other characters are sort of side characters more so. But the show doesn't really have an overarching story for the two of them. It's just, they're just there for the stories. But going back to the Beast, actually, there's a brilliant thing that the Beast, and the Prince, by the same sort of token, is one of those people who, how should I say this, back in the 1980s, there was less of this whole political correctness thing, and so nowadays, where this would be considered something that, we wouldn't be either allowed to make fun of, or at least not make fun of in a kids show, to sort of teach kids tolerance more than anything else. But the idea was the Prince couldn't pronounce his R's. So he's one of those people that, very much, wound. He went wound the world without a wug. And all that sort of, he produced W's instead of R's, basically speaking. And the reason why this was a thing is that there was a spell that they discovered that could turn him back from being a beast into being a prince. And he very much jumps at the opportunity, and they get everything that they need to make the spell work. And the words are, "Round the rugged rock, the rugged rascal ran." I'm going to let that sink in for just a minute. The exact words they had to say was, "Round the rugged rock, the rugged rascal ran." And to anyone, and I mean anyone, who's ever read a book, a fantasy book, or anything of the sort that involves magic, words are very important. No matter what universe you're in, the words have to be said right, otherwise it doesn't work. And the poor prince cannot pronounce R, he can only say W. So you suddenly get this image of this great big powerful beast turning around saying, "Wound the wagged walk, the wagged wascal," and then there's a blast of light. And Edna pops up and is laughing her head off, and I believe the exact line is something like, "You said wagged walk." "Wagged walk. Why, you ignorant Ramus, you! Those are the magic words to turn you into a Now you've done it!" And the next thing you suddenly get is, the beast has turned himself into something else that isn't a beast. And it's just, it's awful. He turned himself into a teapot. Turned himself into, I mean, come on, people. And the worst thing is that the final joke of the episode is quite literally, he says, I believe it's the cat actually, who sat there, and he goes, what kind of words does one say to turn back into the beast? I have difficulty with R's. One does have limitations, And he sits back and says, "Well, at least there'll be no more trouble with your T's." You have to remember that humour, or at least the joking writing process, was mostly taken up into the grown-up section of television, because in that world there was how do I put it, in that section of TV there was a lot better jokes being written, and yet in the kids TV section it was all really bad, really obvious puns that you could spot from a mile away. It was awful. There's another episode where the Moog discovers a wishbone, and he wishes to be able to think, and he starts being able to think. And Edna tricks him into thinking of a think bubble that is so big she can put him into the think bubble to make him go away. That's logic! I love this type of logic, because that type of logic is ingenious, because it makes kids question everything about everything. I'm telling you right now, when I was a kid, you questioned so much about the world around you. And I'm sure you see it in your children when you go out into the world. They are so inquisitive and such like that. Shows like this make them question. And I'm sorry, nothing replaces that. Absolutely nothing. I honestly just think that was a genius move on so many parts. Willo the Wisp had this wonderful type of internal logic to its world that very much was where you had to be careful what you say. You had to be, careful with what you thought. You had to be, you had to think before you act. Was a real staple of what was there. You had to be very clear and very precise. And I honestly think that was something that was very invaluable, especially to people growing up. And to me, it definitely was an invaluable experience to learn. But why am I talking about Willo the Wisp at all? It's not just because it was a good TV show from way back and it was one thing that I grew up on. But it was something that my brother and sister, I think, grew up on as well. Bear in mind, I am the youngest child of 3. And my brother and my sister are, at the bare minimum, 10 years older than me. In that time difference, there's a lot of stuff that they've watched, and they watched growing up, that got passed on to me. Through VHS tapes, or, and eventually through things that I could find DVD-wise or whatever. But in those VHS tapes, I was given a chance to be able to experience something that, for a lot of them, they had grown up with as well, that gave them their own inquisitive minds. And honestly, stuff like Willo the Wisp, the Wombles, the Clangers even, these shows gave us all a sense of imagination and a sense of deeply interesting logic. And it's those kind of shows that honestly gave us all the ability and gave us the want to really do things like read the Discworld books from Terry Pratchett, or read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or at least watch the TV show or listen to the radio play. And I want to just say very briefly to you guys that, in complete honesty, shows like this are what make people like us. We are the weird, the wonderful. We are the ones that will think completely randomly outside the box. Shows like Willo the Wisp are what makes me a random fish, I feel. Watching the Discworld stuff, that makes me, maybe not watching the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie, but I will never be able to comment on that better than other certain YouTubers have. But stuff like this and stuff like the Wombles made us who we are. And I'll be absolutely honest, those of you who have kids, there are worse things to aim towards. The 2005 second season I have not watched a single episode of. And I don't overly plan to. I've seen clips, I've seen images, and they've updated the animation, which I have to say I applaud you for, well done. And I will say updating animation is a good thing, we need to update it, but I almost feel as if something like that at that point in time was so well crafted that it needed to be not low grade animation, but that time period's type of animation. At that particular point in time, what it was perfect for that setup. There are other shows out there in the world, shows like Danger Mouse, or maybe, slightly older, kids' TV shows that would get a decent revamp in later years. I know that Danger Mouse got a reboot on CBBC not that long ago, so I know that these things do actually exist. But there are things that work and things that don't work. Danger Mouse works in this modern era. I honestly don't think Willo the Wisp needed a second season in 2005. And B, I don't think it deserved the second season because, honestly, everything that was good about it was encapsulated in that one throw-up in 81. And honestly, that's kind of the best thing about it. It's that little staple in time. It's that moment when storytelling was absurd, but nice absurd. And I'm going to leave you with that. Find something in this world that's nicely absurd. And maybe you'll be able to find something fun about it too. And just one last time, for purely my own comedy's sake. Wow, the Wagged Walk, the Wagged Wascal, Wan. Randomfish, out.